Good evening, everybody. We're glad to have you on for this almost second to last week of Let's Talk Money. Tonight, we're going to be talking about facing financial fears. And it might be a little bit different than what you're thinking, so just know that. But we are excited to have you on tonight, and we're ready to get started. So we'll do introductions really quickly. My name is Sasha Grabenstetter. I am a consumer economics educator. As you probably heard, if you've been listening week to week, you probably know that already by now. But I serve in Grundy, Kankakee, and Will counties. Kamaya, do you want to go next?
I can go next. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamaya Walls-Bichard. I also have the same role and title as Sasha, and I serve Livingston, McLean, and Woodford counties. We are so excited to have you all on tonight. Kathy.
Oh, yeah. And welcome. I'm Kathy Sweedler. I serve Champaign, Ford, Iroquois, and Vermilion counties, sort of east central Illinois. And very excited to have people join us on this presentation, which I'm looking forward to because I always learn new things from Sasha on this topic.
Well, thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. We will jump over to our next slide. As usual, we started this last week, and I wasn't on last week, but I would love to know what county or state/city you're logging in from. So if you're from another state, give me your city. But if you're from Illinois, I just want to know your county. I was like, I'll hop on and read the chat for just 1 second. If I can get it open. Does not want to open.
We have Knox, Vermilion, Champaign. I see New York on here.
Dang.
Kankakee, Louisville, Kentucky, Will County, Livingston, Cook, a lot. Wonderful.
A lot of other educators from Kentucky, which is exciting for us.
Yes. And I love Louisville. It's beautiful. So that's super exciting. Okay.
Thank you. This does help us kind of share with our supervisors who are reaching. So that's why we're asking, because they're asking us.
Yeah, they want to know who's on. So we're not your names. We just want to know what county you're from. Let's make that clear. So tonight, these are our learning objectives. We're going to talk about identifying financial fears. We're going to use some concepts from behavioral economics to overcome obstacles. And we're going to talk about techniques to discuss finances with your spouse or significant other. So this is kind of a jam-packed, but we'll get going and get started. So I'm looking forward to it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we go through. So because you maybe have already found the chat by putting your county or city/state, we want to know what a financial fear that you might have is. It doesn't have to be big. It can be little. It can be whatever you'd like to share. But we'd like to know like a financial fear that you have. There'll be a spider in my wallet.
I love it. I love it.
That's a good one. Being old and poor in a dreary nursing home. Oh, fear of not enough retirement money, that you're throwing your money down a hole, defaulting on debt payments, running out of money, identity theft, sufficient funds for comfortable retirement. I won't be able to afford a house, paying for kids' college. So these are all typical fears that a lot of us have. So thank you for answering in the chat. If you want to continue answering, please feel free. But these are common financial fears that most people have. Never getting out of debt is a big one. And that's an understandable one because sometimes that debt can feel overpowering and overwhelming. A lot of people have a hard time understanding financial concepts. And so hopefully tonight we can clarify some of these financial concepts for you and you get to learn something new. Another big one is loss of job. And I know that with COVID-19, we've had a lot of people possibly lose their job and kind of work through that. So, if you are, we are here for you. Not saving enough for children's education, that's a big one. That's probably one of my fears. And then, of course, having to declare bankruptcy is another one. So some interesting and common financial fears that a lot of people do have. I would say also another one is about never being able to retire. It just did not come on the list that I found. So I want to talk about this slide just for a quick second. This is from Carl Richards. He is an author and speaker, and he has a lot to say in kind of like picture formats like this. And so this is kind of how conversations around money kind of happen. Like, how are we going to pay for college? We need to look into that. Will I have to work forever? I need to look into that. And it just continues in being a conversation around money and never about it. We kind of like continue to stay outside of it instead of digging deep. And so I just wanted to give you this really great visual of conversations around it. And maybe tonight you can start having conversations about it. So with financial fears, there's kind of typically the fight or flight method. I think that happens. A lot of people like to fight about it, or they like to not talk about it, which happens as well. I know there's lots of ostriches out there who put their head in the sand and they don't want to talk about it, and then we're done talking about it. But you really need to ask yourself, like, what is this financial fear really about? Like, is this real? Is this a real fear that I can look at and discuss? And what are some things I can do about it today is another question to be asking yourself. Like, because if you can do something about it today, then let's start talking about it. Let's start moving forward. And then, of course, you know, you have to learn from these tough moments, especially when things are rough or tough. I know that on our podcast a lot, we talk about it, our personal experiences about times when they were rough or things we're struggling maybe financially, or even just understanding concepts. Because sometimes I can tell you that even as a financial educator, that those concepts can be hard. And then, you know, creating a SMART goal, and Kathy talked a lot about SMART goals last week, and we'll most likely put that recording in this week's as well. But, you know, just making sure that you write a SMART goal, it can help combat some of these fears that you might be having and kind of bring them down to the surface. So one thing I would love to talk about, some ways that kind of help combat this fear, is behavioral economics. And so it's called behavioral economics, and it is a noun. And so it's a method of economic analysis that applies psychological insights into human behavior to explain economic decision-making. And if that went over your head, that's okay. But basically, this is the study of why we do the things that we do. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing a few behavioral economics pieces, just so you know that there's tons and tons of different biases out there. But I just wanted to click on a few or talk about a few tonight because, you know, there's only, these might be helpful to help quell some of those fears that you might be having. So we're going to talk about these 4 tonight. We're going to talk about framing bias, self-control bias, confirmation bias, and present bias. These are the 4 I want us to focus on tonight. And we're going to give you some knowledge gems, and then drop some practical application for you, because that's important as well. Because yes, it's great to know about the bias, but if you can't understand how it works in your life, you're not going to be able to use it. And then a lot of them are identifying impulse buying. And with today's technology, we can, you know, buy things with the snap of our fingers or putting our thumb on it for our mobile wallets. So this is one way that we can kind of help combat some of that impulse buying. So the first one I want to talk about is called framing bias. And this is typically a cognitive bias. It's usually something that your brain just looks at. And this is the tendency of decision makers to respond differently to various situations. So let me give you a good example. But you should also know that people always make the same choices if given the same outcomes. So that's something to be thinking about. So when we're talking about a framing bias, this is a great statement. 2/3 of Americans have retirement savings. Positive. We like that. You know, that's great. Like 2/3 of Americans have retirement savings. Woohoo! But if I told you in a presentation, instead of hearing that, maybe you heard only 1/3 of Americans have no retirement savings, you might have a different response to it. It might feel a little bit nasty. It might feel different. So a lot of people do use framing bias to kind of maybe sway you one way or another. Another great example is about hamburger meat. You might be at the grocery store and you might see 90% fat-free hamburger meat, and you're like, hey, that's awesome. But if they started framing the meat as this only has 10% fat, you might be like, ooh, it only has 10%. Like that 10% fat might be kind of gross. So framing those biases can really help us understand why people make the decisions that they do. They want to take advantage of your susceptibility to framing, and there's a reason why. So we'll see that in a second. So again, we talked about there's the positive and the negative. So again, 2/3 of Americans have retirement savings. That's great. We as a gain. A lot of times this leads to risk adverse behavior. We make less risky decisions because of this. And I'll talk more about this in a second. But if it's a loss, if it's framed as a loss, we actually leads to risk seeking behavior. We actually start to lump ourselves in with the other third of Americans. And we say things like, well, I mean, I don't have any retirement savings, so I guess I'm not going to do it. And that can lead us to make poor choices on retirement savings or anything else, really. I know that there's a statistics about how many Americans can save $400. And I don't tell people that statistic because it's a negative statistic. And then people are like, oh, that's me. And I really struggle with saving, so I'm just not going to do it. Just not going to do it. And that's not the great mindset that we want to have. We want to have, we want you to be able to start doing more positive behaviors and continue to make good choices. So it's just one of the things that is one of the most strongest biases in decision making. We talk about framing. So some ways to combat it are to reframe the problem. So in that example, like we talked about, there's 2/3 of Americans, they have retirement savings, woohoo. So, but if I told you the opposite and I said 1/3 of Americans don't have retirement savings, you can be like, well, yeah, Seisha, that's terrible, but 2/3 do, you can try to change the vibe of the room and make sure that people know that they understand that, yes, I'm framing it in a specific way to make a specific point. Another one could be like, I'm not saving. Like I can imagine, this is my spouse saying this. He's like, we're not saving enough. And I'm like, well, actually we are. We have retirement savings. We're saving for our son's education. We are saving, but we're just not saving what you want to save. So reframing that problem can definitely help. And then of course, taking yourself outside and putting yourself in the outsider's perspective can really help as well. I think that's really helpful when we start talking about the differences of framing bias and making sure that, we don't get so tunnel visioned and we continue to keep moving forward with making good choices. So I think having an outsider's perspective can really help. So I know that, when counseling, that helps as well. A lot of times that's why we ask for outsider perspective. And it's just another way for us to overcome this framing bias. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about self-control bias. This is probably one of my favorites to talk about. It's an emotional type of bias, obviously, because sometimes our emotions can overwhelm us and we become unable to do our control. It just happens. I know sometimes when they get very hot-headed, they might say things they don't mean or do things they don't mean, and that happens. But this is the tendency that causes people to fail to act in pursuit of their long-term goals or overarching goals because of a lack of self-discipline. So if this does happen to you, it's okay. This is just an awareness activity. Don't feel bad because of that last little term of lack of self-discipline, but just something to be aware of. So money is definitely an area where people notoriously lack self-control. This is, I think this is a no-brainer for most people, but we know that money is an area where people do really have some issues. That's why we do money mentors, actually. And that's why we have mentors on tonight so that they can learn more about behavioral economics and more about all the other gamut of personal finance so that they can help others who might be lacking that self-control. So I wanted to give you an example, and this is from research. So I want to introduce the Save More Tomorrow plan. So the employees are approached about contributing more to their retirement plan before their scheduled pay increase. So like, let's think next September 1, you're getting a raise. Woohoo! That's great. So these employees are approached before September 1 about their scheduled pay increase. They're talked to about increasing from their paycheck following the raise. They want to take that money with them and take that raise and maybe put that money towards something. And so the next thing is that the contribution rates also continue to increase automatically with each scheduled raise until they reach a max. So that money will go into that retirement account until there's a maximum. And employees can opt out at any time. So the other thing that you should know is there was a consultant who was also asked to be there. And he used some commercial software to compute a desired savings rate for these individuals. And they discuss with each individual employee for their September 1 raise how much increase in savings would be considerably feasible. So some maybe weren't feasible at all. Maybe it was 20% or 30%. And if the employee seemed really reluctant about doing it to increase his or her savings rate, the consultant would constrain the program to just like 5%. So, like they originally sat down and they were like, well, you really should be saving quite significantly more. The employee could say, well, that doesn't make me feel very comfortable. And so then the consultant would say, okay, 5%, we'll do that. So this happened in a mid-sized manufacturing company. There were 315 eligible participants, and all but 29 agreed to meet with the consultant to hear their savings advice. So quite a bit of people. Of the 286 employees who talked to the consultant, only 79%, or only 79 of them, so only 28% of them accepted the consultant's advice. And of the rest of the participants who did not accept the savings rate from the consultant, 162 of them decided to join the Save More Tomorrow plan. So this is important, and I'll tell you in a second. So let me tell you the results. I know there's a lot of words on the screen. I'm very sorry. But the results is that these people who were in the Save More Tomorrow plan, the goal of the plan was that every time they got a pay raise, that the participants would use that small chunk of pay raise, and that would go into the retirement account. So these people stayed in the Save More Tomorrow plan with their pay raises. So they still get paid the same, like let's say they got paid $100 and they got a $10 bonus every month. I don't know, I'm just giving an example. And these participants then put that money into that retirement account. So only 4%. So one thing you should know is that only 4% of participants dropped out of the plan prior to the second pay raise. So they could stay up until there was a maximum, and that was 3 pay raises. Another 20 more participants dropped out, 18% between the second and the third pay raise. But 80% of people stayed in the plan through all 3 pay raises because they had already signed up for it. And those pay raises were just going into that retirement account. Another thing to note is those who withdrew from the plan. So these participants, these 20 or 33 participants, they did not stop contributing that pay raise to the original level. So they just kept that money there. They didn't actually bring it back down, which is great because we want them to save, right? They just merely stopped taking the future raises from being put in there. So self-control bias can cause clients to spend more money today at the expense of saving for tomorrow. So the key lesson here of all of these words is that people are generally poor at planning and saving for retirement. They need self-discipline imposed on them consistently in order to achieve savings. This is kind of why we have, if we have a 401k or a pension or anything like that, that money is just automatically pulled out for us. And this is why, because people are poor at planning for savings and retirement. And studies have shown that people who did not plan for retirement are far less likely to retire securely than those who did not plan. So I know that was a lot of verbiage and a lot of words, but let me give it to you in a different example. So in a lot of other countries, you have to opt out of being an organ donor. So like the participation rates in other countries can be like 90, 95%. We're here in the United States, we have to opt in. So that's just a quick example of the same concept, but in a different way. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Kathy, are you ready for our first poll?
Now I am. Thank you for waking me up.
Sorry. So, we love taking polls. We love doing this. We want to hear from you guys. So we just want to know, how well would you rate your own self-discipline? And be honest, it's anonymous, so we won't know. So the first one is, I always achieve a goal if it's important to me. If I want to lose 10 pounds, I will diet and exercise relentlessly until I am satisfied. B is, I can often attain my goals, but sometimes I have trouble sticking to certain difficult things that I have to resolve to accomplish. I have resolved to accomplish. Ooh. And I have a tremendous amount of difficulty of keeping my promises to myself. I have a hard time saying no and to myself, and I often ask others to help me in obtaining my goals. And it's okay to be, honest about it. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds. I love seeing these answers. It's kind of fun. Kathy, you want to chime in? You seem like you want to.
We're up to like 75% of people have voted, so it's worth giving you a couple more seconds to get those votes in.
Yeah, we love them. We love hearing from you guys.
Enjoy your chocolate.
Chocolate, heck yeah.
Somebody's having chocolate while we're voting on self-control.
Hey.
All right, I think
No
we're ready.
shame.
Okay, if I end the poll now?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so most people are in the middle. They often attain their goals, but sometimes they have trouble sticking to certain things. So this was just a quick bias test to see, you know, are we really, really good at achieving goals, or do we kind of have some struggles? So some good things to talk about. Thank you, Kathy. I'm going to stop sharing the results. Cool. Here we go. Oh, I don't want to color on this. Okay. So we're going to talk about some ways to combat self-control bias. So spending control is the first one. If I can get it to go. Yes, spending control. So this behavior can be counterproductive to attaining our long-term financial goals. And so you should probably pay yourself first. It's very critical when we're talking about spending control, to kind of notice what's going on, what kind of behavior are you having, and are there ways to make that control better. So for example, a spending control could be like a limit on something. So my husband and I have a limit of $100, and if we want to spend more than that, we have to talk to the other one. And I think that's fair to have a spending control or a spending limit. It just, especially if you're working hard to combat this self-control bias. The next one is lack of planning. So we just talked about retirement, but people who don't plan for retirement are much less likely to retire less securely than those who do plan. So we like to create those SMART goals for financial decisions, and we definitely want you to make sure that you are making financial goals and making sure that you're keeping on track with all of the planning that you have. And that can be simple planning. It doesn't have to be that you meet with a financial planner or even a financial coach. It could just be that you want to meet with somebody and just talk about money. It can be a friend. It could be a spouse or a partner. But just having some planning is better than none. And then, of course, the benefits of discipline. Discipline is really hard. Trust me, I know. I've wanted to lose weight all last year and finally had to get with a nutritionist, and I meet with her. I talk with her actually almost every day, and I send her pictures of my food, and it's really disciplining me to not eat terribly. I mean, the same thing could be for money as well. So you could have someone that you talk about with money with, again, you know, having that conversation. Remember why you're saving for X. So maybe you're saving for retirement or your kids' education and not paying down, you know, or you're paying down debt. It can be helpful reminders for you to remember, because self-discipline is definitely difficult to obtain. Trust me, we all are human beings. We all have flaws. We all have issues where we can't do certain things all the time. So just look for the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully that will be able to help you with your self-control bias. So hopefully this was interesting to you guys. Another one is creating a rule of thumb. So a rule of thumb can definitely help curb spending. So this is kind of like the first one we talked about making spending controls. Its example is if you want to go out to dinner for date night, you know you can't spend more than $50 for dinner. And this could include food for two and tips. So this is something to be, you know, like, we're going out to dinner, it's a dinner date, it's only $50. You know, like, where can we go that we won't spend more than $50, or we'll meet right at $50 and we'll have that control. A second example, because I have young kids, is, you know, we only go out to eat if the kids can eat free, which probably causes some chaos in life, but I think it's another good rule of thumb to have. That way you don't have to pay for the kids' meals. Kids' meals can be, in my line right now, kids meals can be really expensive. So just some really good rules of thumb to be thinking about. So, and, you know, we love hearing from you guys. So we wanted to know, what are some ways that help you curb your spending? So if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, I'll hop this back up and we'll see. Does anyone have anything that they use to help curb their spending? You need a budget, the financial app. Only buy things on sale. limit online shopping. Really thinking if it's a want or need, those are great. I only use cash, and if I don't have the cash, I don't buy it. If I'm spending more than $50, I think about it for a week. That's good. That's a great one. Have drinks at home before dinner. That's a good one too. I approve. These are all great, guys. If you please feel free to keep going. We're going to keep moseying on with the webinar. But I think these are really great, and we will share these out in our email. So I just want to let you guys know that as well. I love sharing information like that. Okay, moving right along. Next up, we're going to talk about confirmation bias. This is a cognitive bias, so it's kind of, it's your brain. But this is the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories. So it's our ability to convince ourselves of whatever it is we want to believe. So if I believe that all cats are purple, and I want to Google it, all cats are purple, and that's all that comes up, well, that's all I believe. But people tend to seek information that kind of confirms their existing beliefs. So let's give an example. So you hear a rumor that your favorite company, whatever it is going to be filing bankruptcy. With this information, you consider selling the stock and then go online to research. Give me 1 second, sorry. Ooh, I got like a frog in my throat or something there. So with this information, you can consider selling the stock. You then go online to research and only read stories that confirm the likely bankruptcy. Kathy or Kamai, could one of you read from there?
Got it. So that means if you're searching and you're only reading the stories that confirm the bankruptcy and the likeliness of it, you might have missed an article that's important, that's talking about something new that they're coming out with. And so and even if you read an article, you're still, because of the confirmation bias, you're still leaning towards giving more weight to the things that you read that back up the idea that you have in your mind already. And so in this situation, you might be more likely to sell it at a loss than hold on to it to see what the new products are and whether you would want to move forward to it. And, I think if we think in our own personal lives too, we can think of things that deal with confirmation bias that aren't even necessarily about finances, about, leaning towards the information you expect to hear, you want to hear, and then putting more weight on that piece. Okay.
Great, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you
Sure
so much.
thing.
Sorry, everybody.
No worries.
I have a little cough and it will not go away, but I do not have COVID, so we're good. So yeah, that's great, Kathy. I appreciate you stepping in there. Confirmation, like Kathy said, confirmation bias can happen anywhere. I feel like confirmation bias happens with a lot of news outlets and news sources that I'm just going to throw it out there because I am not PC. So, thinking about overcoming them, a way to overcome confirmation bias is to seek opposite advice. So yes, sometimes it may be hard to talk to our friends across the aisle, or even if they have an opposing viewpoint, but making sure that you know all the aspects of something is really important to overcome confirmation bias. Another thing is to avoid confirming questions. So what this means is that, like I could ask Kathy, all cats are purple, right? All cats are purple. And she could be like, no, but all cats are purple, kind of, we want to avoid those confirming questions that will make your point more valid to you. Like you're already sitting in it. I think cats are purple. I feel bad for our transcribers right now listening to me talk about purple cats, but they, making sure that you just make sure that you are moving forward and asking questions that are kind of the opposite. So don't ask questions that confirm what you think it is. So that's a good one. Yes. Okay. Our last bias, and this one is really, I think is really important to know about. It's called present bias, and it is a cognitive bias. So it's our brain. And then of course, this is the tendency to give stronger weight to payoffs that are closer to the present time when considering trade-offs between two future moments. So basically, we use this present tense bias a lot when we talk about let me think of you an example. A perfect example might be like, I am going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to go work out, and I'm going to get in some good healthy food in the morning. Well, the next day comes, and you know what? I would rather sleep in and eat a cake instead. So present bias can really mess with us a little bit. So we're gonna do a little bias test because I want to know. I want to know what your answers are. So Kathy, if you wouldn't mind pulling the poll up. So the question is, would you rather receive $10 today or receive $15 tomorrow?
Of course,
There's no right or wrong answers. Go ahead.
We have these very money savvy people on tonight, so I think we're gonna see that they're gonna make a liar out of you here.
Oh, dang it.
But I like that we see some differences though too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. Has anybody else been seeing, and somebody just put it in the chat, the marshmallow test, or the candy test where they put it in front of like the toddlers or the preschoolers, and they say, if you don't eat that now, you can have 2 later. So
this is what this is. Yep. Same thing, except we're talking about money.
Yes, of course we're talking about money, not marshmallows, but somehow we keep talking about food and
food, marshmallows. But yeah, actually in the marshmallow test, so I have been seeing these, like, parents do these on like Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok, and they'll like leave them like, I'm just gonna go to the bathroom, I'll be right back. No, the kids had to wait 15 minutes for their second marshmallow. That's a long time to a little kid. If I did that to my son, I think he'd eat the marshmallow. So, but the results are, that most of the people would receive $15 tomorrow, and a few people would get $10 today. So seems like we got some savvy present bias overcomers. So thank you guys. I really appreciate your time. We do have a financially savvy group tonight, Kathy. So one way to overcome present bias is to add a spoonful of sugar. Definitely helps the medicine go down a lot better. I know that adding a spoonful of sugar to anything can make it easier. So we want to make things fun and to a challenging goal, and can make it easier to accomplish. This is a real life example, so excuse my grossness of it, but I have lots of cats. I hate scooping cat litter. I hate it. It's gross. I don't like it. So one of the things that I do to overcome this challenging piece of my life is I actually like to listen to music or podcasts while I'm scooping the cat litter. Or sometimes it's my opportunity to have like 10 minutes away to talk to my friend. But this can apply to any kind of goal. It can be losing weight, getting in shape. But the most common is for saving money for the future. So we definitely want to be able to give people the opportunity to make things easier. So before I go to the next slide, you might see those things online. So like, let's say you want to decrease debt. Okay. Let's say you have $20,000 in debt and you want to decrease it. And so one fun thing that you could do to make it your goal fun is to make like a thermometer chart. And every time that you make a payment or you pay off like $1,000, you can color it in and it looks really cool. Or every time that you, make a $500 payment, you make like a ring chain with construction paper, and then you can cut it, rip it apart and make it more fun. Other ways are, you could, if you have budgeted for it, you could go out to eat and say, I've paid down $10,000, woohoo! But don't put it on the credit card after that. So just some ways to make things a little bit more fun. Okay. This is me, obviously. I share this picture with you because it's kind of a fun exercise. And I've seen it from other educators, especially those who are in the field of behavioral economics, that this really helps. But if you take a picture of yourself and you age it, it can really motivate you to save for yourself for retirement. Because let me tell you that 60, 70, 80-year-old Seisha is going to be real upset with this Seisha if I don't save for myself. And being able to think forward and not think about tomorrow or think about, oh, that really cool backpack I just bought, can really help curb some of that spending that we talked about, especially when we're talking about impulse spending. When people envision how they want to live in their retirement years, they're more motivated to save. Hopefully now this picture doesn't scare you too much. I think I look a little bit like my grandmother on my father's side, but I digress. We'll keep going. Another way to combat present bias is to pre-commit. So you must decide today that you want to do X, Y, or Z in the future. So a great example is this year you want to file your taxes. Maybe you just did, July 15th just came by. And you put $1,000 in savings. That's a great one. You decide early on that you're going to do that. Okay, sorry. Example number 2. I'll set up an automatic payment from my checking account of $25 on the 15th day of each month to fund my child's 529 plan. So you've already talked about it. You've set it up. You've pre-committed, and you're just going to do it. These are some really great ways to help you curb, again, that impulse spending, but make sure that your goals, the goals that you've decided with those SMART goals last week, are figured out and done. So some good things to talk about.
Seisha, you're muted.
Oh no! So I said all that and I was muted?
I know.
Oh,
I knew it was some wisdom right there.
Okay, well, basically,
just a little bit.
No. Should I talk about? Did you hear example number 2?
Yes, we did.
Okay, good. I don't know what happened. Weird. Okay, but these are just some words of wisdom from Kristen Berman. She's the co-founder of Irrational Labs, and she is also a behavioral economist. Woo! But one thing you can also do is pick a few select friends or family members that you can share your financial goals with. And this is the key. Ask them to check in with you on your progress. You might have heard of money buddies. This is a great way to do that. If you're looking to make some progress on your goals, you can meet with a money mentor. We have that program through the University of Illinois Extension. Or you can find a trusted person that is making good choices with their finances and have those conversations and have them be your money buddy. So these are good things to talk about. So before I move on to Kathy and having her talking about how to have conversations with your partner or spouse, we just wanted to, we talked about the fears in the beginning, and how all those work and how we can use these things to combat those fears by making sure that we overcome these biases. But, you have to sometimes do them with other people, and that's where this piece comes in. So Kathy, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Seisha. We just wanted to take a little bit of time to address communication with significant partners, people that you share spending with, and recognize that for many people, it's really hard to talk with their partners about money and about spending. And in fact, we know from different surveys and things that many people do share their purchases or how much they spend from those they love. And I think my sense is that it starts out kind of small, but then it may grow. So it starts out like, oh, I'll just have a little bit, this, that, or the other, but then it can add up, and it can add up to be a lot of credit card debt or other debt, and just the problem can grow. So we want to keep in mind that one of the fear of talking and communicating is real, and that if this is something that you find to be a challenge, it's worth thinking about what are some good strategies for working around this problem or this issue. Next slide, please. So, and we also want to say that we do get that money leads to arguments, and it can also quickly escalate from being sort of a neutral topic where you just thought you're bringing up something little, and it goes into a big deal. Let's just put it that way. This gentleman or person has a nicer way of putting it, but that's the way I think about it is you start out and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, how did we get into this argument with all these vibes going on, and could go into other things, and that's not good. And if you know that that's a pattern for you and your partner, then even just thinking about that pattern and thinking about how can we change the pattern is the first place I think to start. And certainly right now I will say that with the extra tensions that we're all under and things, this is really easy to happen. You know, my husband and I don't usually argue about money. We might argue about time or other things, but we even had an argument today that was over no big deal, but it just quickly went from neutral to more. So anyhow, moving on. So, you know, some tips to kind of think about, and I would also welcome people to put in the chat as I'm talking, what are some of the ways that you start conversations with partners or have conversation with partners to avoid conflict, but to at least be able to talk out issues. And Seisha started out actually this presentation about showing how we kind of talk around things and we don't get into the topic. So any tips for getting in also help. So we always said avoid that harsh startup. Certainly don't do it when you're hungry or angry. That's not going to help. We've talked in other presentations about using I statements. How do you feel about things? How is it affecting you if there's a money behavior that's going on? Trying to keep it focused so it doesn't become, well, you never take the trash out and I always have to do the dishes or any of that. Other things that could go on, but keeping it focused on the topic, you know, really being mindful of things. And I like this one, that consider going on a walk together. I feel like one of the things that's been successful for my husband and I when we have needed to have in-depth conversations about things is to plan it out a little bit and find a neutral spot. And by neutral spot, I really mean like where people can't interrupt us, including children. And so, because that just really gets frustrating. So those are kind of the things to do it. And then also to kind of start it off on a positive note, like, you know, what are your shared goals that you're trying to work towards? And then how is talking about a financial situation help you get towards that goal? So that's actually a good example of framing, is to put it in that framework. So rather than we have a problem spending too much, I'd like to talk, a way to reframe that would be, I'd like to talk to you about our goal to save for retirement. And I'd like to have an opportunity for us to brainstorm about how we might get going on that goal, and when would be a good time for you for us to have that conversation. So I think we've also got some good ideas going in the chat. I see people saying find a time when you aren't alone without interruptions, and I agree with that. Starting with the positive. Kamaya makes a good point about different money personalities and experiences. If you want to jump in here, Kamaya, and elaborate on that, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, like, even in my household too, with like different backgrounds, different ways in how we were raised, different household, that all influenced like how our initial approach to money became. And then we started understanding each other a little bit better in the beginning of the relationship to know that, you know, maybe how my parents handled like their money issue may not work for like my present relationship. So just like the different background, and as people get older too, like developing like different habits and attitude towards money. So all of those things influence like those decisions and those types of conversations.
Good points. Great. All right.
We could probably talk about tips for talking about money with your partner or spouse for another hour. It's a whole other topic itself. So.
But I think we've been trying to pull them in a little bit as we go to each of our presentations. So I'm glad that we had a chance to focus in on it for a few minutes here.
Yeah.
All right, back to
Thank
you, Seisha.
Thank you, Kathy. I really appreciate you giving us some good tips about talking about with your spouse. So as we wind down the webinar, because it's about that time, people, you know, we have all of our stuff out on the Extension website, and you can check that website out here, and we'll put those links in our email that we send out, because we did not do any chat links tonight. So that's just my bad. Of course, if you're interested in our extending wellness tips, Kathy could probably talk a little bit more about this, but if you you get them via your cell phone, your smartphone, and just kind of some helpful reminders, and that could be a good way to use some of that self-control bias. You know, when you see it, maybe think, oh, maybe it's time for me to start thinking about X or Y or Z. So Kathy, do you want to chime in on that, the wellness tips?
I think you got it pretty good. They include financial tips as well as other aspects of wellness, nutrition, family life, mindfulness, things like that. And I just find that they come about once a week, and it's just a nice way to kind of stay in touch with my own wellness, to kind of check in with where I am.
That's great. Thank you, Kathy. Of course, you all may know this, but if you don't, we do have a podcast, and it's called Family Financial Feuds. And every month we talk about different aspects of personal finance and what kind of feuds they might bring on in our lives. This just yesterday, a new podcast was released, and we talked about ways to decrease expenses. And it was actually kind of really fun to do. And we have enjoyed, releasing the podcast every month since November 2018. So we've got quite a few under our belt now. Of course, we'd love to know if you could give us some feedback. We'll also send this out in our, hopefully we can get this in the chat. So that is great. And then if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I know Kathy's going to be moving our mentors into the Money Mentor room, but we'd love to hear from you guys and see any questions you have. But if you are ready to go, you're free to go. So thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming on. So
somebody asked about listening to previous webinars, that sessions have taken place. In the email we'll send you a link to this recorded webinar, and they're all in that, it's called Illini Media Space, and they're all in the same playlist. So you should be able to check around and find that. So they're all right there.